All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We're tackling a phenomenon today that drives almost everyone crazy, yet it is absolutely everywhere. We're talking about why highly adaptable, seemingly principle-lacking fence-sitters don't just survive in modern organizations, they actually thrive. You know exactly the type, right? The folks who never seem to take a firm stand, who constantly shift with the wind, and who somehow always manage to land on their feet when the power dynamics change. Now, from a purely moral standpoint, they can be incredibly infuriating. But today, we're going to push past that moral judgment. We need to analyze the hidden underlying logic of power dynamics to figure out what makes these people so profoundly valuable to a system.
To really get how this system works, we've got to start with the average employee's worst fear. For the vast majority of us, the people without direct power or heavy influence, the only things keeping us safe are strict rules, solid principles, and standard procedures. Those are our protective walls. But a fence sitter, well, they don't really respect those walls. They're incredibly flexible with the rules. And when they start playing their games, the rigid rights of ordinary people become, as this quote perfectly captures, just mud manipulated by power. Because these flexible operators can effortlessly bypass standard procedures, they become a terrifying threat to the basic safety and security of the everyday worker. So yeah, it's a deeply instinctual reason to dislike them.
And so that brings us to the massive paradox at the heart of this explainer. If everyone literally hates these people, if they represent the classic opportunistic bureaucrat, like that infamous TV character Zhao Dagong, who just readily sacrifices principles to appease leadership, why on earth do bosses keep them around? Why aren't they immediately fired? It seems totally counterintuitive. You'd think a leader would want a team of highly principled, steadfast employees, wouldn't you? But, as we're about to see, from the top of the hierarchy looking down, the view is completely different.
Section 1. Fence-sitters versus hardliners.
Picture an organization trying to push through a major, necessary reform. A senior manager's main goal here is development, keeping things stable and actually getting the agenda moving. Now consider the stubborn hardliner. If a hardliner makes a mistake or hates a new reform, they are going to dig their heels in. They will protect their ego, their face, and their perceived authority at all costs. Even if it means totally obstructing the company's progress or trampling all over core rules to force their way, they will not yield. They become a massive destructive roadblock. But what about the fence-sitter? They operate on what we call a soft retreat. When they push an agenda and hit strong, principled pushback or legal resistance, they fold. They don't fight to the death for a terrible idea or let their ego blind them. Ironically, their absolute lack of a rigid spine is exactly what prevents catastrophic damage to the company. They actually end up preserving a baseline of justice simply because they back down when the heat gets too high.
Section 2. Lubricants for controlling risk.
Here's the really wild part. Managers aren't just passively tolerating this flexible behavior, they are actively leveraging it. We have to completely redefine the fence-sitter here. We've got to stop looking at them as a moral failure and start recognizing them as a mechanical necessity within a complex ecosystem. They essentially act as an organizational buffer zone. Think about that for a second. In a rigid system where absolutely everyone strictly follows the rules and stands entirely on immovable principles, the machine gets brittle. It can easily snap under immense pressure. These adaptable individuals, they provide crucial elasticity. They give the organization the maneuverability it desperately needs to shift direction quickly without breaking the entire structure apart.
So, the bottom line is they provide executives with a highly specific, incredibly valuable toolkit. Let's break it down. First up, they have amazingly high execution power. Because they aren't bogged down by personal ideology, they instantly adapt to their boss's will. There are no lengthy debates, just immediate action. Second, their lack of a strict moral compass makes them perfectly willing to take on highly controversial, complex tasks that principled employees would flat out refuse. Third, they act as the organization's white gloves, meaning they handle the messy, gray area work, allowing senior leadership to keep their hands totally clean and maintain plausible deniability. And finally, they offer controllable political risk. If a high-stakes project blows up in everyone's faces, a fence-sitter is the ultimate, easily sacrificed pawn. You can fire or replace them instantly to appease the masses, which keeps the executives perfectly safe.
Section 3. The organization's gray space.
This brings us to a kind of uncomfortable truth about the environments we all work in every day. We'd love to imagine that a pure black and white workplace is the ultimate ideal, but in reality, strict purity is just terribly inefficient. Human society, and by extension any corporate organization, is incredibly messy. It's full of conflicting interests, vague policies, and completely contradictory goals. And here is the ultimate irony of the whole situation. Even ordinary people,
The exact same people who passionately claim to hate fence-sitters frequently rely on these flexible actors. Seriously, think about it. When you personally need to navigate a ridiculously complex administrative process, or when you desperately need a favor to fast-track something that's hopelessly stuck in red tape, who do you go to? You definitely don't go to the rigid rule enforcer who's going to quote the company handbook at you. No way. You go to the flexible operator who knows exactly how to bend the system. By trading on their own moral flaws, these individuals effectively become the necessary lubricants of society, keeping the gears turning when they would otherwise just seize up entirely.
Section 4. The fatal cost of purging them.
Let's wrap up this explainer by zooming out and looking at the massive systemic risks here. Because, it's super easy to sit back and say leadership should just fire anyone who isn't 100% principled. But if a leader actually executed that purge, they'd be left with a team of people who only see the world in absolute black and white. Every minor disagreement would instantly escalate into an epic battle of egos. Every single necessary reform would require months of exhausting philosophical debate. The organization would lose absolutely all of its vital elasticity. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Without these flexible, opportunistic lubricants to smooth over the inevitable contradictions of daily business, would your entire organizational engine simply seize up and destroy itself under the sheer weight of rigid hardliners? It is a messy, deeply uncomfortable reality for sure, but understanding it, that is the true key to mastering how modern power truly operates.